Shalom. I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, and it is as follows.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, following meetings with Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, said, "The two sides are not there yet, but we are making progress, and we're beginning to have dialogue on the toughest hurdles yet to be overcome. This is hard work."
As a result, Israel's top negotiators with the Palestinians will travel to the United States to have talks with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry about the parameters for a framework agreement between Israel and the Palestinians to continue peace negotiations. Justice Minister Tzipi Livni and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's envoy Yitzhak Molko are to meet with Kerry and his staff members, including the U.S. Special Envoy Martin Indyk. Furthermore, Chief Palestinian Negotiator Saeb Erekat said that he would meet with Kerry in the United States in the coming week. The Palestinians are expecting Kerry to present them with a written document outlining the U.S. position on the peace process, Erekat said. Kerry has been working for months to reach a framework agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, whose goal would be an establishment of a Palestinian state. A senior Palestinian official, Abed Rabo, said the plan proposes Palestinian recognition of Israel as a Jewish state, the establishment of the Palestinian capital in a part of East Jerusalem, and solving the refugee problem in accordance with former U.S. President Bill Clinton's vision. However, Abed Rabo said that there are considerable gaps between the positions of the Israeli government and the Palestinian leadership. Netanyahu is refusing to open the file on Jerusalem, he said, while the Palestinian side is adamant in rejecting Israel's demand that it be formally recognized as the Jewish state. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said that the goal of a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians would be the mutual recognition of the nation-state of the Palestinian people and the nation-state of the Jewish people. According to Kerry's plan, settlement blocks would remain under Israeli control, as would border crossings and airspace, though American and Jordanian troops would be present as well, Abed Rabo said. Israel, he added, would retain the right to enter Palestinian territory in hot pursuit. In addition, Israeli negotiators are discussing a series of limited withdrawals linked to progress by the Palestinian Authority in maintaining security, a senior Palestinian official said. There are talks on long-term security arrangements and standards that would be subject to so-called improvement performance on security by the Palestinians overseen by Israel, said Abed Rabo, a senior member of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Israel would determine, in the end, whether the desired level had been reached or not, although the United States say that they will be present and involved in evaluating this performance so that Israel will evacuate some areas, especially from the Jordan Valley. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry affirmed this view by stating that at the end of the Israeli-Arab conflict, it would involve a phased but complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from the West Bank. The Palestinians need to know that at the end of the day, their territory is going to be free of Israeli troops, that occupation ends, Kerry said, but the Israelis rightfully will not withdraw unless they know that the West Bank will not become a new Gaza. Nobody can blame any leader in Israel for being concerned about that reality, he added. In his meeting with Kerry, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he has no intentions of evacuating any Israeli settlements from the Jordan Valley or uprooting any Israelis who live there. Netanyahu said the principles of a future potential agreement with the Palestinians would become clear in the next few days. Once those principles were made clear, Netanyahu said, it would be possible to assess whether the Palestinian leadership is truly seeking a breakthrough in the peace talks. According to Debka, which is an Israeli intelligence and news-gathering website, Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas launched his diplomatic intifada against Israel on January the 23rd from Moscow. His meetings with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, Abbas distanced himself from the efforts of U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's efforts to reach a framework agreement between the Palestinians and Israel, and instead asked Russia to take a more active role in supporting a Palestinian state. Debka said that the efforts of Abbas to dump the United States and solicit the support of Russia caught the United States and Israel unprepared and surprised their intelligence agencies. Nabil Sha'ath, a senior Palestinian official, bluntly stated that it was time to end the American monopoly on peacemaking after the United States has proven incapable of imposing a peace agreement upon Israel. Meanwhile, a former member of the Palestinian negotiating team, Mohammed Shataya, called on the Palestinian Authority to endorse resistance against Israel. He said that the Palestinian leadership was planning to seek membership in the United Nations after the failure of the peace talks, so to prosecute Israel for war crimes. He called for an international conference on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, similar to the Geneva Conference on the Syrian situation. The Palestinian goal, Shataya said, is to internationalize the Palestinian conflict. Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas said that despite efforts by Secretary of State John Kerry, the Palestinians have so far gotten nothing out of the ongoing peace negotiations with Israel. As he usually does, Abbas blamed Israel for the lack of progress in the peace talks. The problem is with the Israeli side and not with us, Abbas said. He referred to Israeli residents in the West Bank as invaders with no right to Palestinian land. Abbas also stressed that Palestinian Arabs living inside what is now Israel were on the land 1,500 years before Israel was established. That is why Palestine can never recognize Israel as a Jewish state, Abbas said. We demand what was given to us by the international community in 1967 while acknowledging that limited land swaps would be acceptable. Also, he said that there can be no peace without stability nor agreement without occupied East Jerusalem being recognized as the capital of a Palestinian state. Finally, Abbas rejected the idea of extending the peace talks with Israel beyond the 9-month timeline set to expire at the end of April. Abbas said it was agreed that the negotiations would continue for 9 months. We have had a large number of negotiating sessions during which we discussed major issues. There is not talk about an extension. We need to focus on the remaining time and not think about prolonging the talks. Israel Chief Negotiator Justice Minister Tzipi Livni lashed out at Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, saying in an uncharacteristic critique that if he stuck to his unacceptable positions, the Palestinians would suffer the consequences. Livni said Abbas's positions were not only unacceptable to Israel, but to the entire world as well. And if he continues to stick to them, then the Palestinians will be the ones to pay the price. Abbas has recently stated that no peace agreement would be possible without all of East Jerusalem, including the Old City, as the Palestinian capital, and has staunchly refused to recognize Israel's self-definition as the state of the Jewish people, and has demanded the right of return for Palestinian refugees and their descendants to Israel proper, saying, nobody but the refugees themselves could negotiate away that right. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry also warned the Palestinians, saying that they need to take advantage of the present opportunity to reach a framework agreement with Israel. The Palestinians, he said, must understand that the current round of talks could be their last chance at a negotiated solution for the foreseeable future. If the Palestinians fail to achieve statehood now, there is no guarantee that they will anytime soon. He added that if talks fail, the Palestinians will be no closer to being masters of their own fate and no closer to resolving their refugee crisis. After delivering those stern warnings, Kerry pivoted to positive arguments for peace. Imagine this time next year if Palestinian businessmen and government leaders from the state of Palestine are able to talk to the world's largest investors at next year's World Economic Forum conference. The European Union warned both Israel and the Palestinians of the high price of losing European Union trade and aid if negotiations collapse, the European Union ambassador to Israel said. We have made it clear to the parties that there will be a price to pay if these negotiations fail, Ambassador Lars Fauberg Anderson said. If Israel were to go down the road of continued settlement expansion, and were there not to be any result in the current talks, I'm afraid that what will transpire is a situation where Israel finds itself increasingly isolated, he said. In addition, Germany announced that continued grants to Israeli high-tech companies, as well as the renewal of a scientific cooperation agreement, will not be allowed for Israel companies that are located in the West Bank or in East Jerusalem. A senior Israel Foreign Ministry official expressed his fear that the German move will lead other European Union member states to follow suit, adding that this decision represents a significant escalation in European measures against the settlements. As a result, the boycott against the settlement has now spread from European Union institutions in Brussels to individual EU members like Germany. In response, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that he isn't ignoring the spreading boycott against Israel, but economic pressure will not advance the peace process, but instead it will only harden Palestinian rejection of it. If Netanyahu does agree to a framework agreement with the Palestinians, the leader of the Jewish Home political party, Naftali Bennett, intends to get the support of enough Knesset members to block Netanyahu from adopting any of its proposals. In doing so, Bennett is trying to get support against the Palestinian state from members of Netanyahu's Likud Beitenu political party. An alliance with the right within the Likud party is an important mutual interest between Jewish Home and Likud, Bennett said. The goal is to torpedo any agreement and to prevent deterioration to the 1967 borders. While no Knesset members have signed any written commitment, Bennett is confident he will receive enough support from Likud Beitenu Knesset members to reject any possible agreement with the Palestinians by making it clear to Netanyahu that he would be left without a government. In doing so, Netanyahu will realize that he has no choice, a source close to Bennett said. More than 200 right-wing activists met with Likud Deputy Transportation Minister Zippy Hatovli and other Knesset members to strategize how to prevent concessions to the Palestinians. The activists vowed to pressure Knesset members not to support any steps that would lead to the creation of a Palestinian state. All indications are that the United States intends to force an agreement on Israel that would endanger its security and its values, Hatovli warned at the event. Talk of keeping only settlement blocks is adapting the path of former Meretz political leader Yossi Beilin and is an offense against the views of the right. The way to stop such destructive plans is through the Likud and the coalition. The Prime Minister must understand that he will have no government and he will have no party if he agrees to the U.S. framework proposal. So, with U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry set to present his framework for a deal between Israel and the Palestinians in the coming days, Land of Israel activists will hold a special emergency meeting. The event will discuss alternatives to the Kerry plan, which the government of Israel seems ready to accept, even though details are still yet vague. What is known about the plan, says activists, is that it entails significant Israeli withdrawals from the West Bank and or relinquishing of territory inside the 1948 armistice lines in exchange for the so-called settlement blocks in the West Bank. However, they said that there are other options, specifically the extension of Israeli sovereignty to the entire land of Israel. The theme of the convention will be a single state between the Jordan and the Mediterranean, that being the state of Israel. Participating in the event will be leaders and activists of various political parties, including Jewish Home and the Likud. In addition, the event will be attended by numerous activist groups, including Women in Green and the West Bank Council, among others. Well, this is going to conclude this week's report, where we shared with you regarding the current status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process.
Until we do it again, shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.